The Rules of Work by Richard Templar. Forward. Most of us, I'm guessing here, want to do our jobs well. Most of us, still guessing, want more important jobs, bigger salaries, greater security, higher status, and a bright future. So we try to do our job so well that we will be rewarded, respected, and promoted. And that is where we go wrong. I'm not guessing anymore. Of course, we have to do our jobs really well. There is no future for the bungler, the layabout, or the sociopath. But Richard Templar puts his finger on the flaw in the implied logic that concludes that the better we do our job, the faster we will rise up the organization. He points out that we are all doing two jobs, but most of us are only conscious of one of them, the job in hand, that is meeting our sales targets, reducing machine downtime, speeding up monthly management accounts, whatever. The other job is both larger and vaguer, making the organization work. If people think you have it in you to solve the problems of the organization itself, not just your small part of it, you have broken away from the pack. But how do you do that? There is an easy answer. Read this book, follow the rules. I realized when I read this book that I have always been half conscious of the rules, though I never managed to formulate and analyze them with the clarity and detail that Richard Templar brings to the task. There was a time when I had to interview a lot of promotion candidates in the BBC, and with most of them, I had this feeling that somehow they didn't look like top management material. Was it how they dressed, how they walked, how they talked? Bits of all of those, but most of all their attitude, their frame of mind, which somehow affected all the others. Most of them stressed how well they did their present job, which was quite unnecessary. We knew that that's why they were there. It was their entrance ticket to the interview, and there was no point in constantly waving it at us. Amazingly, few of them had given any real thought to the problems of the job they were applying for, as opposed to the job they were doing, let alone the problems that faced the BBC as an organization. They were oblivious of the rules. The American management guru Peter Drucker makes a useful distinction between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is doing the job right, effectiveness is doing the right job. Your boss will tell you how to do the job right, but you have to work out for yourself what the right job is. It means looking at the world outside the organization, what it needs, and how its needs are changing, and what the organization must do and stop doing to survive and prosper. I remember interviewing two chief executives of great corporations. Both had joined from college with hundreds of other bright, ambitious graduates, and I asked them why it was they had got to the top of the heap and not any of the others. One said he didn't know, but what he could tell me was that every job he'd ever done was abolished after he left it. The other didn't know either, but said that no job he would ever done existed until he started doing it. Both of them were striking examples of people who focused on doing the right job, of thinking like the chairman even when they were junior or middle managers. And I have no doubt they followed all the other rules as well, always somehow looking and sounding like someone who should be in a higher job. And as Richard Templar stressed, they were popular and respected throughout the organization. You can't be a successful chief executive if you are surrounded by embittered, resentful, and demoralized colleagues. The rules of work is first and foremost a guide for the individual manager, an eye opener for all those who would like to rise to the top but don't seem to be able to find the map. But it is also very much a book for the organization itself. The great danger is fossilization, becoming preoccupied with its internal tasks and systems and procedures, and losing touch with the world outside. And this will happen if everyone is concentrating on being efficient rather than being effective. In other words, if they don't follow the rules. Introduction. I first started formulating the rules of work many years ago when I was an assistant manager. There was a promotion going for the next step up, manager. There were two possible candidates, myself and Rob. On paper, I had more experience, more expertise. Most of the staff wanted me as their manager, and I generally knew the new job better. Rob, to be honest, was useless. I was chatting with an outside consultant the company used and asked him what he thought my chances were. Slim, he replied. I was indignant. I explained all about my experience, my expertise, my superior abilities. Yep, he replied, but you don't work like a manager, and Rob does. Yep, that's about the strength of it. Needless to say, he was quite right, and Rob got the job. I had to work under a moron, but a moron who worked right. I studied that work very carefully. The consultant was spot on. There was a manager's work. I began to notice that every employee, every job, everyone in fact had their work. Receptionists worked in a particular way, as did the cashiers, the catering staff, the office workers, the admin, the security staff, and the managers, of course. Secretly, I began to practice the work, looking the part. As I spent a lot of time watching the work, I realized that there was also a manager's style of attire, of speaking, of behavior. It was not enough that I was good at my job and had the experience. I had to look as if I was better than anyone else. It was not just a walk, it was an entire makeover. And gradually, as I watched, I noticed that what newspaper was read was important, as I was what pen was used, how you wrote, how you talked to colleagues, what you said at meetings, everything in fact was being judged, evaluated, acted upon. It was not enough to be able to do the job. If you wanted to get on, you had to be seen to be the right type. The rules of work is about creating that type. Of course, you have got to be able to do the job in the first place, but a lot of people can do that. What makes you stand out? What makes you a suitable candidate for promotion? What makes the difference? Act one step ahead. I noticed that amongst the managers there were some who had mastered the work, but there were others who were practicing unconsciously for the next work, the general manager's work. I happened at that time to be traveling around a lot between different branches and noticed that amongst the general managers there were some who were going to stay right where they were for a long time, but there were others already practicing for their next step ahead. The regional director's work and style and image. I switched from practicing the manager's work and leapt ahead to the general manager's work. 3 months later, I was promoted from assistant manager to general manager in one swift move. I was now the morons manager. Walk your talk. Rob had the walk rule 2.5 developed a style that gets you noticed. But unfortunately, he didn't adhere sufficiently to rule number 1. He didn't know the job well enough. He looked right, sounded right, but the bottom line was he couldn't do the job as well as he should have done. I was brought in over his head because they couldn't sack him. Having just promoted him, it would have looked bad, and they needed someone to oversee his work so that his cook-up could be rectified quickly. Rob had reached the level of his own incompetence and stayed there for several years, neither improving nor particularly getting worse, just looking good and walking right. He eventually shuffled himself off sideways into running his own business, a restaurant. This failed shortly afterwards because he forgot Rule 1.2, that is, never stand still. Or maybe he never actually knew it. He carried on working like a manager instead of a restaurateur. His customers never really took to him. By practicing the general manager's work, I got the promotion, but I also got it because I paid great attention to doing my job well. Rule number 1. Once in this new job, I was, of course, completely out of my depth. I had to quickly learn not only my new role and all its responsibilities, but also the position below, which I had not really held. I had stood in for managers, but I had never been a manager. Now I was the manager's manager. I was in great danger of falling flat on my face. Never let anyone know how hard you work. But I was by now a dedicated rules player. There was only one recourse, that is secret learning. I spent every spare second available, evenings, weekends, lunch breaks, studying everything I could that would help me. But I told no one. That is Rule 1.10. Within a short time, I had mastered enough to be able to do the job well enough, and the embryonic rules of the work were born. Have a plan. Being a general manager was both fun and pain. It was 50% more work but only 20% more pay. My next step logically was regional director, but it didn't appeal. More work, much more work, but for not that much more money. I began to study rule number 3, that is, have a plan. Where did I want to go next? What did I want to do? I was getting bored being stuck in the office all the time, and all those endless, dreary meetings, and all that time spent at head office. Not for me. I wanted to have fun again. I wanted to practice the rules. I formulated my plan. What the company didn't have was a roving troubleshooter, a sort of general manager's general manager. I put rule number 1.4, that is, carve out a niche for yourself, into play. I suggested to the chairman that a report was needed. I never suggested that this was the job I wanted, but the agenda was obvious, I suppose. I got it, of course, and became a peripatetic general manager, answerably directly only to the chairman, and with a job description I wrote myself and pay a lot more than the regional directors were on. But I practiced rule number 5, that is, look after yourself. They didn't know and I didn't let on, but I cultivated their support and friendship. I was never a threat because it was obvious I was not after their job. They may have wanted the money I was on if they had known, but they didn't want the little niche I had carved out for myself. And I did this without being ruthless, dishonest, or unpleasant. In fact, I was always diplomatic when dealing with the general managers. I treated them with courtesy and politeness even when I had to pull them off on some aspect of their job. I added rule number 4, that is, if you can't say anything nice, suit up, and rule number 8, that is, cultivate diplomacy, knowing the people who count. And I quickly learned that if I wanted to know what was going on in a branch, it was best to speak to the people who really knew: the cleaners, the receptionist, the cashiers, the lift attendant, and the drivers. It was important both to identify these people and to be on the right side of them. Rule number 9.6, they supplied me with more information than anyone could have believed, and all for the price of a simple "Hello Bob, how's your daughter doing at university these days?" Rules for you. I have divided the rules of life into 5 areas: you, your partner, your family, your social circle, including work and friends, and lastly the world, to represent the 5 unconscious circles we all draw around ourselves. Let's begin with the most important of these: the rules for ourselves. That is, personal rules, rules for us. These are the rules that will help get us out of bed in the mornings, face the world with a positive air, and navigate our way safely and successfully through our day, no matter what may arise. These are the rules that will help reduce stress levels, give us the right kind of outlook, encourage us to set our own standards, and have goals to aim for. I guess that for each and every one of us, these rules will have to be adapted to take into account our upbringing, our age, and our situation. We all need to have personal standards to live up to. They will vary from person to person, but it is vitally important to have them. Without them, we are adrift and unable to monitor how we are doing. With them, we have a firm center, somewhere we can get back to, somewhere to touch base and recharge. They are our benchmark for personal progress. But it's not all about standards, it's also about lightening up, having fun, enjoying life.